Hey, welcome back to the C Space Studio at CES 2023. I am James Koltecki, and my guest is Bob Ullery, the co-founder and managing partner of Props. Welcome to C Space Studio.
Thanks for having me, appreciate it.
Now, you promised me before this interview that we were going to get a little weird, and I'm very excited to do that. But before we do, we probably should have set some basic definitions so people kind of understand what we're talking about. Props describes itself as building Web3 super brands.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, we are a Web3 product studio, and we are approached often with very nebulous but yet very interesting ideas on how to leverage this technology to do something that hasn't been done before.
So give me an example of that. What's a nebulous idea? Can we start with a nebulous idea and then take it through to kind of execution?
Sure, yeah, I'll give you a couple. The first is on like the organic art side. Work with one of our favorite artists, his name's Waxbones out of the UK, and he came to us with an idea around custom NFT where the consumer could actually pick their own traits. Of course, we're skipping past the definition of NFT here, but
sure.
So a custom experience where folks could actually like design their own NFT, where historically those are based on like random distribution and rarity. It drove some market dynamics, but ultimately our hunch was people want to mint the thing that they love. Let's allow them to do that.
Interesting.
So that's sort of the organic side, and then on the enterprise side, I would say, point to what Fox is doing with Crapopolis, a new show by Dan Harmon coming out this year in 23. And it's all about a new type of fan experience, the ultimate fan pass. How do we get people emotionally invested into the show by way of a new type of engagement? And ultimately, a really cool outcome there was how do we get people to have some sort of game of skill, and the winner actually gets written into the show.
Okay.
And so it's just a new type of opportunity to bring that fan even closer to their favorite creators beyond just consumption of the actual media.
So when we talked about the idea of being able to choose the traits of your own NFT, that's interesting because when I think about an NFT, it's something that either, as you said, is random or that someone else has designed and then I'm kind of choosing to purchase. It's interesting, it's kind of continuing to stretch the definition of what this is or what this could be, because now this is something that I am designing myself, but then I'm also paying for. So how do you think through what the value still is in that case?
I think it was eye-opening for us, right? I think there was a huge boom in the NFT space and people rallied around scarcity, i.e. where rarity came into play. I've got the rarest token, therefore it's more valuable. And I think we were doing a disservice for folks who want to collect based on the love of the brand or the artist or the musician or whomever they want to collect this asset as almost a souvenir or something they can consume. And so that opened our eyes to that, is people want to collect the things that they love or remind them of a special moment in their life, not something they were randomly distributed because they might get rich randomly.
Yeah, so in a sense, were they thinking of it as kind of a collaboration between their own design and that artist?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And that's one of a few examples, but one of my favorites for sure.
What's your message here to folks at CES? What kind of conversations are you having here?
There's a wide spectrum, and there's the non-weird, pragmatic. There's a tectonic shift underway in terms of disruptive technology that's going to change the world, and I truly believe that. Web 2, as far as I'm concerned, is totally obsoleted today. If you get really what we call red-pilled in the space, I think it could get really weird and potentially chaotic. Part of that is just the age-old theory of Moore's Law and the acceleration of innovation and progress. And every cycle, that progress, it takes half as long to come to fruition. I think potentially a lot of people will be blindsided on how fast there is a new sort of order of things, especially in fintech, in self-sovereignty and asset ownership. That's not just JPEGs. It's your mortgage, your title, the land deeds, etc.
It's such an interesting time to have this conversation. I had a lot of conversations around crypto, blockchain, Web3, metaverse in 2022, a year ago.
Yep.
And since then, I think if you just look at the headlines and you look at the general public sentiment around people who are not red-pilled, who are maybe not in this space, but looking at it a little bit removed, they'll think, well, that whole thing totally collapsed, right? The value of NFTs plummeted, crypto's down, these different crypto companies collapsed, Bitcoin is way down, so I guess we can kind of move on to the next thing. Do you see that sentiment out there, and what's your reaction to it?
I do absolutely see that sentiment. I'm annoyed by it, partly because I feel like it's misappropriated by way of potential just misinformation. It's easy to look at a market go down and say, that's broken, it's done. I think it's really hard to stop an idea whose time has come and arrived. There is no putting this genie back in the bottle. partly because it's just a better mousetrap of what we're used to. Okay, like the idea that I can run programs across every person's cell phone in the world at scale and host no infrastructure as a technologist is just a super compelling idea, just around resiliency and uptime, and then permeate that out into like the core promise of what it is the deplatformization of assets, where the asset becomes the platform. It's not an object within somebody else's platform.
It's such a mind shift for a lot of folks, and you talked about a number of players potentially getting disrupted. I think you used the term run over. I talked to a number of people here in the C Space Studio. A lot of them are legacy brands. I'm sure many of them are trying to figure this stuff out. If you could ballpark it, let's say I've talked to 30 legacy brands here in the C Space Studio. How many of them and how quickly, in your estimation, will be, as you say, kind of run over by this in the next couple of years?
I don't know if they'll be run over, because what I've seen is they're almost all thinking about this, and not just thinking about it, investing heavily behind the scenes. So full circle, though the market is down, what we're seeing is an uptick in investment in the space, especially from things like R&D dollars, and most specifically from the marketing organizations.
Yeah.
We feel like this is a huge unlock just from a new way to create a customer relationship, direct to customer, and getting rid of the filters and the platforms that's kind of standing in the way between you and a direct relationship.
Is it almost as if, now that the tide has gone out, we can actually take stock of what's real and what's still standing and kind of build from a stronger foundation?
I think so. I think every market that is emerging like this with a lot of hype ultimately needs a bubble to pop, so people take stock, take a step back and say, where's the value here? It's not speculation. Where can I actually apply this and solve a problem or make somebody's life better or create a better relationship between me and my customers?
Are people, are most people going to need to understand this on a deep level? Are most average consumers and users going to need to make the kind of mental shifts that you're talking about? Or will this be packaged using terminology and technology that is already understood to where most people aren't talking about the phrase Web3 and it's kind of behind the scenes?
Yeah, two cohorts there. I think on the professional side, in every division of an organization, I think you need to be cognizant of what it means in terms of how you deliver and execute. On the consumer side, I think most of the bulk of the work right now is around onboarding, actually abstracting it all away. Because it is sort of daunting. Like, oh, I need a wallet, I need to fund that wallet. How do I do that?
Right.
I'm clicking this button, what does this mean? Is this bad or is this good? So can we just totally streamline that? And Props has made great inroads in that regard, where we can allow folks to not only connect with their Gmail account or their Twitter account and get an arbitrary wallet, but allow the brand to pay the gas fees and the network fees on their behalf, so they can just receive this value without really knowing they're working with blockchain.
Without the friction.
That's right.
What does the name Props mean?
Well, kind of like this, like props.
Like mad
right?
props.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not talking about physical, like props in a movie or something.
No, I mean, maybe. I mean, you talk about metaverse.
Exactly, yeah, that's kind of where I was hoping to go. Yeah.
Who knows? Backstory on that, I bought that Twitter handle in like 2011 and just sat on it because I thought it was a really kind of catchy brand and was waiting to deploy it, and here we are.
So 2011, you had this brand idea. The metaverse, most of these concepts were not around yet. I believe Bitcoin started in January 2009, so very early then. What convinced you to make this mind shift? I assume there was at some point some leap, some shift that you had to make yourself. What was it for you?
It's a really good question. I got into Bitcoin circa 2012. Fancied myself a day trader with a full-time job, actually with your sponsor,
Salesforce,
for 15 years. A beautiful organization. Hello to everybody. And I was arbitrating the delta price of Bitcoin between Mt. Gox and Coinbase. I got caught in the Mt. Gox explosion, lost everything, but I was hooked at that point. Enter, circa 2017-ish and the advent of Ethereum, and I thought, wow, distributed compute, that changes everything we know about technology. The death of the server is upon us. We all become servers, right, in this new model. Everything is resilient, it's portable, it's composable. Other buzzwords, that is just sort of a better approach to exchanging value and information on the internet. It's the third wave of this, Web 3. Web 2 usurped Web 1, and Web 3 will usurp Web 2.
And how does generative AI play into this for you? We talk about things like ChatGPT and visual creation of content from AI.
I am incredibly excited and also incredibly frightened by the implications of what we're seeing just in the last few weeks. specifically around ChatGPT. I think a lot of traditional roles within enterprise and organizations can be automated almost trivially. So the question becomes, how do we apply that in an equitable way so that people can still retain their jobs or maybe apply it to create more value? But my fear is, does this sort of negate the value that the human brings? From the AI creative side, I think it's a tool, and I think it's an amazing one. Heard a colleague, John, on a panel earlier describe it really well, which is it allows folks who maybe don't have the creative skills to finally tell their story in a creative way by using this tool that really helps them sort of articulate the vision of what they're trying to show.
I wonder if there are also ways to tie the way that these things are trained with training data from a very wide group of people, and everybody who's in that training data set can somehow benefit from the economic value.
Yeah, I love that idea. I think value distribution is a huge unlock in terms of blockchain. We've dabbled in that with terms of on-the-fly top-line revenue being dispersed upon any creative that was involved in the creation of an asset, even if the consumer is the one that assembled it. Mm-hmm. So all the components on that jacket, there's patches, there's graphics, every single artist that created one, although you selected them, are incentivized and actually rewarded on that sale. And then on the royalty side, fanning out and distributing the residuals on those assets over time. So we think that's a huge unlock for entertainment, rewarding folks that had every single little nuance to do with a film or a television show being, and their estates long-term with a never-ending long tail, always receiving that value that assets continue to create over time.
Well, Bob Ullery of Props, thanks for sharing your mad props with us
here
in the C Space
Appreciate
Studio.
it.
And thank you so much for joining us here. We've got more great conversations on the way from the C Space Studio at CES 2023. I'm James Koltecki. Don't go anywhere.